Let's initialize an array list of integers. Unlike arrays, array lists must contain objects and not variables. So, instead of using an int variable as the type, we're going to use an integer object with a capital I as the array list type. Now, also unlike arrays, you can't easily initialize all the values of an array list in one line of code, like we did with the braces. So instead, we're going to create an empty array list here and initialize the values in the next line.
I'll declare an int.
We'll add these new values using the add method in ArrayLists. Array lists are able to change their size dynamically, meaning the length of an array list isn't set in stone when you first declare it.
The
add method appends the object you put in the parentheses to the end of the list.
Instead of just
so we can copy this line of code a few times, change the number inside each time, and we'll have a small array list of various integers.
Separated by commas.
Thankfully, getting the values of indexes in an array list isn't that much different from how it's done in arrays, just a bit of different syntax. Let's say you want to print the value of the third object in the array list. Instead of putting the index inside a set of brackets, we'll put it as a parameter in the get method in ArrayLists. This method does exactly what you think it would. It returns the value of the index you put as the parameter. So, since the index starts at 0, then the third item will be at index 2. Upon running this, it will successfully print the value of the third object, in this case, 7. Using what you've learned so far, try to create a line of code that prints the sum of the first and fourth items of the array list. Pause the video now and resume when you're ready to see my solution. By using two get methods, one for index 0 and another for index 3, I can add the return values together to get the result. In this case, it equals 5. Similar to getting values, modifying values also has its own method in ArrayLists. It's called set. The set method takes two parameters. The first one is for the index of the object you're modifying, and the second one is what you're going to change that object to. Remember that it should still be the same object type, since we declared that when we created the array list. Since this is an array list of integer objects, we'll just change it to another integer. Let's say 9. Here's another thing exclusive to array lists. Not only can you increase the list size dynamically, you can also decrease it dynamically by outright removing the spaces that objects occupy. As you'd probably guessed by now, we do this using a method, remove. Remove only takes one parameter, and it's the index of the object you're removing. Remember that it's not just setting that object as empty, it's outright removing that space. So, every object in front of it will have its index decreased by 1. Alright, let's look at some examples of loops using array lists. If you remember, when we made a for loop with arrays, we used the length variable to make sure the loop stops at the end of the array. With array lists, we'll do a similar thing, but instead, it's a method called size. In this example, we'll make a for loop that prints every object in the list. So, inside the for loop, we'll use a get method and put I as the parameter. Easy. Here's a trap that you could easily fall into while working with array lists. Let's say you want to remove every item in an array list. You'd think you can just take the loop we wrote for the last part and replace the get method with the remove method, but you'd be wrong. Let's loop through and see what the issue is. Well, I equals 0, so remove the item at index 0. Now, add 1 to I. So now I equals 1, and wait, what about this 2 over here? Well, you see, we don't really need I in this loop. Instead, we could rewrite this as a while loop, where it continues to remove the item at index 0 until the list size reaches 0. There you go. As a final challenge, create a loop that multiplies every integer in the array list by 2. Pause the video to figure it out, and resume when you're ready to see my solution. By using both the set and get methods, we can get the current value of each item and multiply it by 2. And that's the end of the video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Mr. J, as he can probably answer these questions much better than I ever could. Bye.